Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Hello, everybody. This is Gene Bohensky with the Think Small podcast. On the Think Small podcast, we always host distinguished business owners and founders of companies that really have had an interesting career and have a lot to tell people about their business and have things to help you and just fascinating stories from their career. And today we have Phillip Shoemaker of identity.org. He's founded a company in the Bay Area and has a lot of interesting stories to tell about a very good career he's had. So Phillip, welcome to the podcast. So just introduce yourself and how you got started.
All right, thanks, Gene. Appreciate that. My name is Phillip Shoemaker. I'm currently the CEO and founder of both identity.org and personashield.com. I've been, I was lucky enough to be born in the Bay Area during the heyday of the computer renaissance, if you will. And my very first job when I graduated from high school was as a software engineer, essentially, at Symantec, right, who was a startup at the time. And I turned that it was a temporary job, and I turned that into 8 years of my life and really got indoctrinated into the whole Silicon Valley startup scene. And I bounced to a few different companies after that. But in 2009, I found myself working at Apple as I was hired in to be the first person to run the App Store. And that process was interesting, fun. It was a 4-month interview process where my final interview was with Steve Jobs and his entire staff, direct staff, and they sat on one side of the boardroom table. I sat on the other, and they had 3 phones sitting there. I went through them, and they just wanted me to argue with them and discuss which apps I would approve and which ones I wouldn't. I asked them specifically, it's like, okay, Steve was right across from me. I said, Steve, what am I looking for? He said, I don't know. You tell me. And that was the beginning of my career and a career at Apple. And that was pretty much the way the App Store was born in the first place, is that they didn't know what they were going to see. They expected a couple of apps being submitted in that first week. They got 500 in that first week, but they expected 10 to 20. And it took off. It was a much bigger success than they had expected. But they didn't know what they were looking for, right? They just didn't want to ruin the Apple brand. They didn't want to have anything that would hurt users, et cetera. So I sat there in that first interview, in that big interview with Steve, and literally argued with him and his draft about what apps I should approve and what apps I shouldn't approve. And it was crazy. I had nothing to lose. To me, it was fun. It was a fun interview. I actually have always loved interviewing at companies because you learn so much and you get to meet interesting people. And I get to talk about my favorite subject, me. And so it was actually quite fun. But in that one, it was very combative. And that's the thing you have to learn that people don't understand about Apple is when you get to the high levels there and you deal with the VPs, when you're an executive there, that it's a very combative environment. Everybody's battling. And so I battled with Steve, his direct reports, and got that job. And then that became my weekly role, is that every week I had another meeting with Steve and his direct reports, and we argue about what apps we should approve and we shouldn't approve. And I did that for 7 years at Apple and just had an amazing time.
Wow. Did you get your way most of the time? Were you able to figure out what they were looking for over time, or was it partly fun for them, or did they really have a direction that they wanted you to follow?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that because when I went to Apple, I remember that first interview I had with Eddie Q, and I said, look, I think it's brilliant what you guys have done, the way you came out with the iPod, you ultimately created the iTunes store, you ultimately went to Windows, et cetera. To me, it was this well-calculated, thought-out plan. And he laughed and said, you think this was planned? We came up with this on the fly. As it was happening, we're like, okay, now let's do this. And the App Store was largely similar, right? We didn't want, for me, the biggest issue I had with the App Store when I was writing apps was that there were no set rules. I didn't know what I could or couldn't do. And I saw that while I was running it, is that people still didn't know what to do. And I said, okay, the very first thing we need to do is write some guidelines. It took me about 2.5 years to get guidelines approved and written. And I worked on those with legal and Steve directly. It was one of the things he did before he passed, was able to help us nail down all the guidelines for this. But over time, we kind of, by seeing what apps were allowed, and we would rule on different apps, I would bring a lot of those to the executives, to Steve and company, and say, okay, the team doesn't think we should approve this for these reasons. And they'd argue and debate. And look, it was probably 50-50 when they would win or I would win. For me, I was always trying to champion the developer. I wanted the developer to be able to have a good experience submitting apps to our store. I didn't want us to sit on the apps for months. I wanted an answer, ideally an answer overnight, right? You submit an app today, I'll tell you tomorrow whether we approve it or not. That took 7 years for me to get it to 24 hours. That's what a convoluted process was. And in the beginning, it was 500 apps. Towards the end, it was 100,000 apps per week that we were reviewing. A significant number. And I had to build a team and an operations organization and guidelines and hire the right people to make this happen. So it was a difficult and painful process, but at the same time, so rewarding to be able to help out so many developers because, you know, when 2009 came, it was, we were in a recession, right? The US was not doing so great in 2009. A lot of my friends who were developers were getting laid off. And to be able to create a store that developers could ultimately do what they love doing, writing code, and create apps and submit it to the App Store and then have it distributed to 1 billion people was just phenomenal. And suddenly, these developers that were looking for work could finally just dedicate their time to doing what they love doing, writing code, and be able to put food on the table for their family, send their kids to school. And to me, that was like the most rewarding piece of all of that.
And that's a real revolution too, when you think about that. Getting access to a platform, you have a good idea, and you could make it successful.
Exactly, and I think that was kind of the miracle of what we were able to do. Other companies had ideas of doing things like, look, back in the day, Palm Computing, the Palm Pilot, they had an idea of doing an app store, and a third party came out with a small one, and it just wasn't that powerful. This one was one that shipped in everybody's hands. Anybody that bought an iPhone had the App Store built into it, and they could download an app, most of them free or 99 cents. But my goal, right, the goal that's the mission that Steve gave me was, we don't want anyone to have an issue with any apps they download because it's all about trust. And so if we can ensure that an app is not going to steal your money, steal your identity, provide inappropriate content, show you something you shouldn't see, then people will have no problem spending 99 cents to download an app. And I think we got there, right? We definitely were much more trusted than the Google Play Store, the Android store at the time. And I think we did really well. That's why people have no problem downloading apps quickly on an iPhone, because of that trust that we put in there, that a set of eyes, human eyes, see every app and every app that comes into the store. And we have to make a determination. What are they trying to do? And sometimes that's easier said than done, but it is something that we worked really hard to do.
You know, I was just in a networking event where I learned from an MSP provider that's a specialist in cybersecurity, and he said, you know, you cannot trust any Android device because of that, because you just don't know what's on there. You can't trust, you know, the kernel operating system or the apps in the store. And I think Apple's success is partly due from locking that down, right? Not just the operating system, but all the apps in the store. That's really something.
Exactly. You know, Apple had a good vision on this, Steve especially. Obviously, we want the users to be able to trust the platform. The other side of the coin is that we didn't want the governments, and I say governments because it's worldwide, to come in and try to regulate the iPhone and say, here are the apps you can have, here are the apps you can't have. One, that'll slow things down through bureaucratic red tape. And two, Apple wanted to be in control of their own destiny. They wanted to be able to ensure that what people were getting was high quality and not no nefarious purposes, et cetera. But you know, that's something we worked hard to keep the regulators out of our business. And I think we did really well. Look, I traveled the world meeting with regulators in so many different countries because of this. And there were some countries I couldn't go to because people had somebody had a death threat on for me because they didn't like the control of the App Store, right? So I literally got a death threat from somebody they call a celebrity mass murderer out of Australia, who said he would kill me if I ever showed up in Australia. Now, I haven't been to Australia for that reason, even though this person has since passed. But it was terrifying, right? Once people learned my name, I even though I was traveling the world to do this, I got a lot of heat and hate for the power that this team had. Look, I always looked at it this way. I am literally, my team is standing between a developer's possibility of making money and, like I said, putting bread on the table. And to me, people get angry and people say things sometimes that they don't mean, but sometimes they say things they do mean. And to me, that was just part of the process.
Wow. So that brings us to your next venture, right? I mean, how did that go from Apple to your identity business?
Yeah, when I left Apple in 2016, once I got app review down to 24 hours. Right? My goal from day one was to make this a very fast process. In the beginning, it was 3 weeks. That means you submit an app, and 3 weeks later, somebody would look at your app. They weren't looking at it for 3 weeks. They look at it 3 weeks later, and they say no, and they send it back to you with terrible instructions on what to fix. And so I wanted to fix that process. When I left in beginning of 2016, I had it down to 24 hours, meaning a developer submits an app, gets it. Now, the reason I left was, and many people at Apple always said this, that I had the hardest job at Apple because if I approved an app I shouldn't have, I'd get heat from both inside and outside the company. And if we rejected an app we shouldn't have, I'd get heat from inside and outside the company. I mean, articles were written about me, just terrible things. And, how many times the App Store was sued, et cetera. So I was always being deposed. It was a real painful process. But at the same time, or along those same lines, I had people stalking me, waiting for me by my car when I would leave at night. They'd show up at my house in the middle of the night, asking me to approve their app. People would sit in this was back when we were at Infinite Loop. They'd sit in one of the Infinite Loop lobbies with a picture of me. And they would just watch as they saw people coming in and out of the company waiting for me. And I'd always get a message from security or a message from Maria, who was our receptionist there, saying, don't come to aisle 3, somebody's waiting for you. And that was my daily life, right? It was just got so weird. So when I left, I took some time and tried to figure out what I wanted to work on. And I kept looking back at the 2 key problems I had. One is people knowing exactly what I did, where I lived, what kind of car I drove. So that was weird. I didn't know how they figured that out. And the other side of the coin was that I couldn't tell if a developer was telling me the truth online or not, right? Who they said they were, wherever they were in the country. So identifying people. So both of those things factored into why we founded identity.org as a decentralized identity place to try to get rid of these honeypots of personally identifiable information online to allow me to, or allow my kids and my kids' kids to ultimately live a life of anonymity to some extent, right? Not giving away everything. So I created that company and found out pretty quickly, right? That was 2018. That people prefer convenience over privacy. And so about 2 years ago, we decided to kind of pivot the company away from decentralized identity and look at this looming problem that was coming, which was this generative AI being able to generate your face into any situation without your permission. So the idea that suddenly my face can appear in a bunch of ads that people post on social media of me endorsing a product I don't endorse, or doing drugs, or being with women, or being violent, right? There's all kinds of things that people can do with generative AI, and it's gotten so good. It's no longer the six fingers on one hand or 3 arms on a body. These images are good quality things, and it's hard, even for experts, to be able to tell the difference between, is this deep fake or not? And so our company called Persona Shield is now all about that. You go into our system, you scan your face, you tell it what kind of images you allow, what kind of images you don't allow. So you set your safeguards, and you're done. And at that point, our system's just scouring the internet on the back end, looking for images of you that fall outside those safeguards. And when we find them, we pull them off. And that to me is one step at trying to solve this problem. I tried to help secure people and protect people while I was at Apple. And now I'm trying to do everything I can to continue that in different areas. And this is one of them. And the other one is I have a book called Unbreakable that teaches you what kind of safeguards you can put on your life online to be able to make sure that you're not easily hacked, SIM swapped, stalked, swatted, those kind of things.
So what type of people do you think really need to use your service? I mean, we have a wide audience. Is it everybody, or is it people that have specific type of jobs, or who do you think should be the people that should definitely contact you?
Yeah, when we first came up with this concept, I saw it as a tool for everyone. Right? Nobody wants a deep fake of their face existing out there, right? It just doesn't make much sense. And so ideally, I see everyone using it. But let's be honest, right now, it's mostly public figures. If somebody's going to go generate an image of somebody, they're not going to choose me. I mean, why? They want to choose somebody that has a massive following, and these could be A-list celebrities, or heck, a YouTube influencer, a TikTok influencer, those kind of people that show images of them endorsing a product that they don't endorse. Come buy this cryptocurrency, go to this cryptocurrency exchange. These are a lot of these fraud tactics that are being used against people because they believe the person that's telling them. And deep fakes are gotten so good now that these things fool a lot of people, including close relatives and close friends of the intended targets. So in this case, I say it's any public figure. But what defines a public figure? I mean, Gene, you're doing a podcast. Does that make you a public figure? Yeah, it certainly does. I do a lot of social media posts with my face and my videos. So yeah, I'm a public figure too. I don't think people want to generate images of me, but if you get enough following, it doesn't matter. So over time,
you could argue anybody in a kind of leadership role. I know I started before I started my virtual assistant company, I was a business coach. One of the things I realized as a business coach, you kind of have to be a celebrity in your area. You have to be known, right? As someone who can help other people. You have to put out videos of yourself. You have to do podcasts. You have to write books, right? And all of a sudden you are a public figure. You are in a leadership position. So then you are a target. And many business owners are. They have to be, right? Because they have to lead with their business and lead with some kind of intellectual story or approach or whatever it is that they're trying to do. So a lot of people don't like it. I didn't really like it. I had to embrace it because, right? I mean, a lot of people are reluctant to do that, but they have to if they want to be successful in the role they're in.
Right? That's right. I've always loved being behind the scenes kind of guy, but in this day and age, as we release new products, we release books, things like that. You've got to get out in front of it, right? And you got to put your face out there. People want to buy things from people they can trust, people they know, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you one area, the kind of a sensitive area that I think we owe it to our kids to be able to protect them early on, and that's why I think a product like Persona Shield is really powerful. Is if you can onboard your children into this as well, as they get to a certain age. Kids in high school and other things are doing horrific things they just take images of these people,
right.
And they put them into one of these AI systems that nudifies them, and then they post it on social media saying, look, so-and-so sent me a naked photo. Now, it's not really them, but for all intents and purposes, it is.
Right.
And I want those images taken down as soon as possible before it ruins that child's life, right? I mean, it can ruin your reputation in 10 seconds, right? After it takes years to build your reputation. And that's one of the main reasons we created this product.
That makes sense. So for the children, because I know that's horrifying for them, right? When that happens. So what keeps you up at night on your business? What are the things that are challenging for you?
Yeah, there's two key things that obviously keep me up at night. One is just trying to figure out more and more methods of protecting users online. That's one thing. It's always like, what new features can we add? What can I do to be able to help people survive online? Because we have a lot of kids that are growing up on the internet. That's all they know. And they put out so much information about themselves there. So what can we teach them, both old and young, of what information is out there, what they can pull back off and delete using things like data brokers, et cetera. So I'm always thinking about that, right? How do I protect more people online? But the other piece is standard running a business thing, right? Getting enough customers, trying to get our app into as many people's hands as possible. I'm currently going through a round of fundraising for our company right now. That is the reason I'm not sleeping a lot right now, because that is one of these things. I want our product to be able to get into the right hands, and to do so takes money. And a lot of it is marketing money now, because all the development for the most part is done. Right. So now we need to market it to a lot of people, and marketing means influencers, and influencers are expensive. And so that really keeps me up at night, is the fundraising process.
Wow. Yeah, that's always a challenge. And, just in my experience, you really have to vet who you're working with, because you could choose companies that tell you that they know what they're doing, and then you're a couple months down the line without any results. So that's the challenge in
really
this, especially today, because anyone can use an AI tool to make a great proposal, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do a great job. And that's a
so
warning
true.
I have for everybody. I've had that experience myself, right?
Yeah, look, Gene, I think that's a really important thing, because, in the fraud game, we used to look at how poorly formatted emails were, these emails from businesses that claim to be, your bank. We look for misspellings. We look for all kinds of AI has removed that whole angle now. Sure. You have to look so much closer at these emails to figure out, is this really coming from my bank, or is it someone trying to spoof me, right? And that's hard to do now.
But I mean, it's even a level where, people think they can do a good job for you, and they put it together, and you realize when you get into it, they're you're customer number one, right? Yeah. And they're learning on you, right? While you're paying them a premium price. So yeah, absolutely. That's something that people have to be warned about. You can't judge a book by its cover or by its proposal.
That's so right? True.
You can't do that anymore. So anything else that you want the business owner community to know about you and your company? Yeah,
look, I think the thing that we all should be thinking about as we go out there is that we have such a large audience of people using our products now, from these Gen Alphas to these boomers, and we have to take that into account when we're doing things to be able to make the product better and stronger. And so that's something that we're always working on, is trying to figure out ways to help make the product better for everybody, put in features that can help the young and the old alike. And I think that is super critical in this day and age. And I want people to be able to come and use our product, to jump in, send any feedback they have about what we're doing. On the other side of the coin is I think people that run businesses, especially if it deals with money at all, is to help secure their life in a way that allows or keeps hackers and fraudsters away from them. And that's what my book Unbreakable, which is available on Amazon for pre-order on Amazon right now, is trying to do, is trying to show you ways of protecting your life in a way that you didn't think you needed to. Look, a simple idea is that with deep fakes now, especially deep fake voices, is that you can get a call from a loved one saying they need money sent to you right away. And it's usually in a critical way, and you have to respond so quickly that you're missing some red flags. And so it's important to do things like have code words, right? Ask, okay, what's the password? What's the code word to do this? And that way you can at least resolve this relatively quickly rather than sending money into a fraudster's hands. So I think it's important for us to always be looking out, especially in this day and age of AI, to make sure that we're not being scammed by somebody.
Yeah, another thing I learned the other day was that Chase is stopping all voice recognition because it's not reliable, because people can fake your voice. You certainly with people's voices being recorded on YouTube or other places, people can find your voice and use it against you. Yeah.
Yeah. They only need like 11 seconds of a clip of you speaking, and they can generate a very good, your loved ones will think it's you. That's how good quality they are. It's amazing.
Wow. So we're getting wrapped up on time. Just want to point out, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, the best way to get in touch with me is at I'm on X and Instagram and TikTok under at PBS Identity. Those are my initials, PBS Identity. And go to www.personashield.com and just sign up. And it takes about a minute to register your face, and you will have protection immediately.
And your book, Unbreakable, is now available on Amazon.
That's right. It is.
All right, great. Well, it's great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for being a guest. Great to have you.
Thank you, Gina. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down? Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?